Boom, according to that I am live. I'm also a bit quiet on the mic. Let's turn that up a little bit. Hello, my name is Hiko Simon. Welcome. This is Tokyo Tonight. It's 10:30 p.m. Sunday, as always, whenever I come and join. Sorry I'm a bit late. Been a few lately, a couple of crazy weeks lately, so I do not have a lot of topics, although we know that never stops me from getting through a lot of chats. I've got actually quite enjoying, I've got a new setup at the moment. I am looking straight at my brand new monitor. My Dell that I had, 24-inch monitor that I got in 2007, finally died the other day. But honestly, I was kind of looking forward to replacing it. And this one has like a built-in speaker, and it's 27 inches in 4K. And yeah, so actually I've gone and recalibrated all the screens and everything. You can see probably the on-screen looks a little bit different at the moment. But yeah, I'm quite digging the new setup. So yeah, that's me. Although honestly, that's not the reason I was late. I was just tired. Was sort of being a bit lazy with setting up the show tonight. So apologies for that. I hope you're all having a good week. It's been a very good week in Tokyo, I must say. I mean, lately, the topic every week is COVID-19 situation. There was like 20 cases today. I mean, New Zealand had like 100 cases yesterday. New Zealand, 5 million people. Tokyo, 14 million people. Although, of course, New Zealand's testing like 40,000 people a day. Tokyo's testing on average 5,000 people a day. So, Tokyo's not looking for asymptomatic cases. They're not being as aggressive around that sort of thing. But nonetheless, pretty good situation at the moment here in Tokyo. I'm very glad to say. That said, they are this week, they're reopening restaurants and so on, and bars. They weren't closed, actually. They were just being asked to close by 8 o'clock. They're allowed to go back to normal sort of late night hours and so on. So it'll be interesting to see the effect that has. Got Bada Boom. Yes, Odie Jr. Yeah, with that and the government talking about resuming go-to travel, which I'll be sharing later on, I guess it's almost inevitable. There is going to be a sixth wave. They're not even trying to stop it. It's pretty much right now we're just back in a no restriction situation. Vaccinations are, as of today, I believe they're up to like 60, nearly 69%. We're not quite up to 70%. Vaccinations have been slowing down. But, we're hitting that point where everybody seems to be getting more comfortable with ideas about reopening, including to travel. And so on. So, yeah, right now is a good time, although it's going to get bad again. The question is how bad it will get. And it'll be particularly interesting to see how hospitalizations go, at least with the vaccines. I mean, what we've learned from other countries is even high rates of vaccination won't stop there being cases, but it will seem to have an impact on mortality and on seriousness of cases. So, hopefully we'll be better prepared. Really hoping that the last wave that we had was the worst one that we're going to get. But, we'll have to wait and see. We're about to find out. But all of that said, it's a good time right now. It's the lowest cases. It'll actually more than in this year. We've had the lowest cases we've had all year. So, yeah, pretty good in Tokyo. It is definitely, by the way, also getting wintry here. It is autumny, I suppose, is the proper word. We don't say fall where I come from. We call it autumn. But yeah, it's definitely getting like that. We've had a few cold days. Got out the we got out the doona. I can remember getting in trouble. I always got in trouble as a kid in New Zealand and vice versa and in Australia because I would use the wrong words. I've got an Australian mum, which meant that sometimes, we used Australian words in my house, even though I'm a Kiwi. And I remember I got in trouble for using doona a couple of times. I'd still call it doona instead of duvet, which is like a very Australian word for a duvet. But I got that out tonight, or this week anyway. It's getting cold. But still some beautiful days. Enjoyed some running and so on. Played some basketball today. So yeah, all pretty good. Other than that, just again, it's a blessing to be busy with work. I know a lot of people are having a tough time at the moment, and I'm very lucky that I can keep working. But at the same time, nuts. So yeah. Hope you're all doing good. Great to see people rocking, and especially given that I turned this on late. You may notice, by the way, I did not turn on monetization. It's a new experiment. I tried the monetization thing. I just thought, as an experiment, see how it goes, see how it played with the algorithm, and it really didn't change all that much. I realized that although my channel has 32,000 subscribers, I don't obviously have 32,000 views on every video, which means that there's a lot of people who have subscribed in the past, or there's one-offs or whatever, maybe when I was getting subscriptions from other channels and so on. And those people are going to discover that they're subscribed to me and go, oh, why is that there? Or the channels are just not being used anymore. The channel's been around for a lot of time. So, that's fine. It's probably going to stay where it is. That's it. I mean, like I said, I like the size. I like the fact I recognize most of you there in the chat. I love it when I see a new name in the chat, but it's good to see you all rocking in and keeping me company as we go through talking about stuff in Japan this week. But yeah, I must admit, I am also partially distracted that I do really want to keep the chat on the recording. I must admit, it does have the playback. I mean, here's a question. If you watch this recorded, it shows the real-time chat in the recording anyway. Do I need to capture the chat? It is kind of nice to have it on the video, I must admit. Plus, of course, everyone gets the uncensored version this way. I do notice that it is not catching comments all the way down to the bottom. You can see I rejigged the appearance of this just before setting up. I guess it would make it smaller if I wanted to catch every chat in here, but am I fine with the size of the chat box? That's what I mean. I'm distracted because I changed all the settings tonight. I'm probably going to make this bigger. It is funny. I can actually play around with the size of the things on the screen in real time. I probably will play around with this after. Again, I had to change everything because I changed the monitors, but it's looking okay. So yeah, hey, we got Aaron, rainy day where you are. I'm sorry to hear that. We've had a few rainy days here. Got a rainy day tomorrow, but yeah, autumn, best time of year in Japan. It's generally just dry and sunny all the time. We've got like super dryness starting up soon. I'll probably get out the kashisuki, the humidifier. I guess nobody in Japan is really new to Japan right now because they've been blocking travel for 2 years. So either you are here or you're not. If you're waiting to come to Japan and you are going to be in Japan between October and May, really October and April, you need to buy a humidifier. I couldn't even understand the concept coming from New Zealand where it's like damp all the time. Yeah, in New Zealand, believe it or not, it can be too dry. Like being too dry is actually really, really bad for you. You wake up with like blood in your nose and sore throats, and it's pretty miserable. And you can fix it all just by buying a humidifier that will humidify the room overnight. And that's what I probably have to get out soon. But yeah, still a bit typhoony and whatnot. So yeah, let's check out who is in here. We've got Kuberos Tenshi. Good to see Kuberos Tenshi first in the comments. No one there yet. Well, I set up late, so that's why that is. We've got Odie Jr. Good morning, Odie Jr. Good to see you. Good to have you with us. I love the King Charles Cavalier avatar there. 270 AJ. Good to have you with us. One Johnson, party. Yes, we got Bada Boom from Odie Jr. Love that. We got Devoid, good morning. Glad that you could join us. We've got a comment from Kuberos Tenshi. Japanese Tourist Ministry says foreign tourists down 99.2% from pre-COVID-19 season. Yeah, we can call Sherlock off the case. Indeed. I mean, that's right. It's actually more. How did 0.8% get in exactly? I mean, it's kind of a pointless statistic, but yes, Captain Obvious, thank you for informing, not you, Kuberos Tenshi, whoever released those statistics, I mean. AV84K, the live stream already has the bar to receive governmental info about COVID beneath the video for me. Oh, that's interesting. That might have affected it because I did say COVID Reprieve. So maybe they thought I might be on here telling you all, don't get vaccinated, which of course is not what I would say. I would say get vaccinated. Yeah, perhaps that's the thing about putting that in the title. That is interesting, AV84K. I just wonder if it's dangerous, if I need to, maybe I should just call it like C19 or something like that. I'm tempted to actually change the title now. Maybe I should do that. I wonder if I can change it when it's live. In fact, even if I change it, it's probably gonna know by now. Anyway, I don't want to make the video any harder to find, but at the same time, how could I not talk about that thing which is in the news every day? Mr. Cordychep, I'm fine with the size. Thank you for asking. Barry Convex, good to see you. Michael, don't know who Michael is, but good to have you, Michael. Welcome, good to have you in the comments. We've got Aaron, as always, the wonderful moderator. Great to have you back with us. And thanks again for all the support you do every week on the stream. We've got Quentin Rankid. Capture that chat because you scroll around some of the time. Quentin Rankid, that is an excellent point. So that's right, helps show where I am looking. There are, yeah, I know that there are cool live streaming tools which I should probably look at using, which let you actually highlight comments specifically. But I like you having the experience I'm having of watching me confused and dazed and wandering around and being totally missing obvious things all the time. I think enjoy, that's part of the experience of the show. So yes, you can share the technical issues with me. I agree, that's a good reason to keep the chat. Milchman too, hi there, good to see you. Damp, moist indeed, moist and happy with the size. That is how we roll. Tokyo 503, indeed. Tokyo, Japan did play well against the Wallabies yesterday, decent score. Indeed, 10 years ago, maybe 73, and I still remember when Japan played New Zealand at the 1995 World Cup and lost 145-17. Also interesting that New Zealand played the United States of America. New Zealand actually played against Ireland, which is probably the top-ranked Northern Hemisphere team at the time in America a couple of years ago. Now, Ireland beat New Zealand in America. It was a great match. I think it was being played in Chicago. They decided this time they're going to let the actual Eagles, the U.S. national rugby team, play against the All Blacks in Washington, D.C. So historic match. And it was historic that the United States scored its first ever try against New Zealand. They never even scored a try against us before. However, that didn't stop New Zealand scoring more than 100 points. Which, when the highlight reel just showing all the scores takes 15 minutes, it says that America probably is a bit farther to go at rugby, which isn't to say, I mean, here's the thing, thank heavens for American football. If all of those American football players, honestly, even probably a B-ranked pro team, just all decided if you gave them like 2 weeks teaching them rugby, they would probably walk all over the All Blacks. We know that. That's why we're so thankful that America plays other sports. But, yeah, some interesting games on the weekend. Of course, everyone traveling over to the UK to play some good rugby, so I appreciate that. But yeah, indeed, Japan is good. I really think that if it was like the World Cup, like with South Africa or Ireland, where they had a couple of years to prepare for playing against the Wallabies, I really think Japan could upset the Wallabies, actually. But probably on a one-off, like a last-minute arranged tour match like this, yeah, they played a good game. But yeah, I think that was how it was going to go. We've got Octavio Medeiros. Good to have you with us. I don't recognize the handle name, so love that you're here. Numbers are low and borders about to reopen. Don't make me laugh. The next artificial crisis is to suddenly appear. Well, who knows? That's right. I mean, it could be all natural. It could be organic. I mean, it could be, who knows? There could be a bunch of pineapples about to land on us. But we'll see. I actually think that given that UK and United States are reopening travel, the pressure on Japan to reopen travel is going to be pretty intense, especially given that the numbers here are so much lower and that the vaccinations are so much higher. So they can't keep it up forever, but we'll see. You could very well be right, Octavio Medeiros. So yeah. Quint Ranked, yes, noted on the comment chatting. Michael, you've been following me on Twitter since the earthquake meltdown in Tohoku. Wow, that is a long time. That's really where I discovered Twitter, where I found Twitter to be useful. So, yeah, great to have you on the live stream and in the chat. Good to know you. Who else we got in here? We've got scrolling down. By the way, remember everybody, and you don't actually. I thought you had to do @ Hiko Simon. I think it used to work like that, but now if you just say my name, just type Hiko Simon, you have to spell it correctly. It will flash orange like that. So, yeah, do that thing. And if you want me to, if you've got a comment specifically aimed at me that you would like me to respond to or consider or listen to or just read or whatever, you just want to say hello, consider doing that. And I will absolutely, when I scroll back, this is what happens after stories. I scroll back and I see if anyone's got any comments aimed at me. And, yeah, I will actually pick those up. So, yeah, definitely, please feel free to say my name and have it flash up orange there. AV84K, I believe they do so with every video with COVID in the title or the description, mostly to provide a link to official information. Yes, I mean, you could have it go, of course, to somebody's uncle's, horse medicine site, but I think probably, I mean, I realize if a lot of people come to YouTube because they don't trust the government, man, but yeah, I would say that's probably a good thing that they link to proper information, so long as they're not like just blocking everything, which I don't think they're doing. So yes. Clank Gun 72, good to have you back, long time no see, and welcome indeed, wavy hand. We've got who else in here? I think regular people, squirrels, kangaroos, and rabbits. Yes, thank you for that, Cobra Stanchi. Message retracted. That's funny, retracted. There you go, one John-san. Well, I'm sorry that you retracted, but you're welcome to unretract any time, Mr. Cordy Chip. It just makes it easier to find the name. Oh, that's right. It actually means it makes it easier to spell. Honing in on my Beyonce. Always. I feel I have Beyonce within me. I don't know what that means, but I'm pretty sure it's true. Okay, if there's no one else. Oh, we got Hiko, I made it. It says Maddie, good to have you in here. Maddie is just at the bottom. I don't have the chat box capture are properly calibrated. So you're going to see Maddie pop in there in a minute. Maddie just randomly like hit space or something to make the chat scroll. Oh, I so want to fix that. You know what? I am going to fix it. Damn it. I can fix this stuff on the fly. And it will not cause technical issues because I am a technical genius. Boom, boom, boom. Damn, I've still got to actually fix that quite a bit. Yeah, boom. There you go, Maddie. Even got you in the comments there. Yo, you made it. Yes, you did. I'll be careful not to scroll up too much, but gotcha. So anyway, not a lot of topics, but we are up to 1050, so I will dive into it. Oh, say my name. Got it. I was not thinking that. I mean, I'm sure whichever aspect of Beyonce I am channeling right now, I'm sure it's accurate. So even especially with that. The bunny was indeed a nice touch. Christopher Luke, and good to have you in the comments. I'd say it's about time. I've been chasing squirrels for 15 minutes. I don't know. I should release a pop song called Chasing Squirrels. One for the notebook anyway. So yeah, this was kind of interesting. Oh no, please show. It does. Okay, this is interesting. The Great Britain, or at least better than average Britain, I don't know, it's kind of an arrogant name for an island if you ask me. They have a it is actually the same size as Japan. Now this is the problem. You know what? I'm going to invite another technical issue because I'm using like iOS like version 1. This is like a iPhone 6 over here, and it is not showing graphics, and it really annoys me every week that I want to show a graphic and talk about it and it's not working. So give me a second. I'm going to fix this and possibly break the entire show. So, boom, okay. Give me a moment. Okay. Let's break things. Now, how do I... Oh, give me a second. I'm going to share screens. Over here, screen mirroring. Boom. Okay. Okay. See, now that works. Okay, so now I can show graphics. Back. Yeah, we'll see. This could work out as a disaster, but we'll see how it goes. So yeah, interesting. Great Britain and Japan are approximately the same size in terms of surface area, but put side by side, it's actually when you factor in the white areas are areas which can actually be inhabitable areas, you know, flat land. And black areas indicate mountainous and too rugged to be inhabited. You can see that Japan actually, in spite of being actually bigger than Great Britain, oh, come on. Oh, I know the problem. Oh, gotta turn off the... Okay, that'll do. I turned off the power saving, which actually also made me realize that my battery is alarmingly low. But yeah, you can actually see that Japan is like so super mountainous that everybody is crammed in. So you can see the greater Tokyo area, every bit of white like part of that map is pretty much like, except for maybe in Hokkaido, is totally crammed full of people and inhabited. Yeah, just goes to show why Japan is so it's so densely populated. I mean, you think that Japan's got what, 2.5 times the population of the UK in a narrower space. Just shows sort of how challenging things can be here. Also, totally tempting fate at the moment. I'm going to plug this in. Oh, see, and that's what happens because this battery's about to die. Boom. Okay. So I thought that was just an interesting thing. Linus 360. What are the real reasons I jog? What are the real reasons I jog? Well, honestly, I was going stir crazy. I mean, I literally, when I started working remotely, like when was it, March? I realized that there were days I have a step counter on my watch, and there were days I wasn't even walking like 200 steps. I was literally just sitting in a room. And I think just when you're used as part of your routine to going outside and going across Tokyo all the time, and you realize one day that you are not going anywhere like for weeks, I felt like just going for walks, just to you kind of felt literally like you're in prison, and I sort of felt like I just needed to travel some distance originally. So originally it was psychological. Also, I did realize that just through eating healthier and being at home, I was losing weight, and that was good. So I thought I'd do some extra exercise. I mean, when I was going to the office, which was an hour commute for me every day, I was I was doing kickboxing on the way home from work a lot of nights. So that was exercise. But when I was stuck at home, I wasn't going to kickboxing anymore. I wasn't doing any exercise, and I was going stir crazy. So I started jogging. That's why I started jogging. I used to jog in high school, but I hadn't really done it since then, actually. So, it's been a 20-year break, more than that, 25-year break. But it's a lot of fun. It's healthy, and that's why I do it. Thank you for asking, Linus360, and good to have you here in the comments. If there's no other comments there, I'll go to the next one. So Japan's private sector salaries fall for second consecutive year. Now, of course, this is obviously part of COVID, but the other part of this is at the moment, it is weird that salaries would be falling even with that, because Japan has an underemployment situation. So theoretically, the value of workers, it's harder to find workers for jobs, particularly with all the foreign workers, the foreign intern program and so on not working at the moment. There's 200,000 foreign interns with visas who are not in Japan at the moment who should be. So there are lots of positions available supposedly, but employers just won't pay more. So you have this irony in Japan. Also saw an interesting thing the other day that wages in Japan have not changed have not increased. Basically, certainly they haven't increased against the cost of living for like more than 25 years. But also Japan has basically not had inflation for 25 years, which means that an average new joiner salary for a university graduate is the same in Japan now in 2021 as it was in 1995. Which is a funny thing. Whenever I leave Japan, so ever since I've come to Japan, food at the supermarket, rent, basic products and whatever, salaries, everything is exactly on the same scale as it was. It hasn't changed at all in the whole time I've been here. In fact, a lot of things have gotten slightly cheaper. Whereas then I go back to Australia or New Zealand, or I go to America, and prices are always going up slightly, and people's salaries are going up accordingly to account for the inflation for prices going up. So it's kind of weird. Japan is caught in this sort of time slip where I guess what the result is for me is that I go overseas and it feels like everything's getting more expensive. But of course, what's happening is the economy is just scaling up and Japan is not. And perhaps this is part of how Japan handles its demographic collapse, where it becomes an aging society and so on, and it becomes less wealthy. It won't be so much that everything will collapse, as everything will just stay frozen when the rest of the world keeps moving along. And perhaps that's how it happens. But that is definitely a thing that's happening at the moment. And I must admit, when I came to Japan in the late 1990s, in 1999, 1998, I thought I was coming to Japan, where I was coming to a place where I would earn better wages than I could get in New Zealand. And I could at the time, but wages in New Zealand have jumped ahead. And arguably, although I guess the cost of getting an apartment, this is the other thing, an apartment in Auckland now costs more than it does in Tokyo. But also, I'd probably get paid more than I get paid now for the same sort of job. I mean, so for that, I'd rather be here. I'd rather be in Japan. It's a more interesting place, and I get to do more interesting work and so on. But it is kind of funny being here, and it's like we're caught in a time warp where nothing's changing when the rest of the world is. Certainly, COVID is exacerbating that. But that is an interesting thing that is happening at the moment for people who are thinking about coming to Japan. I mean, it's still cool, and you still have a good quality of life here, I think, but it's not a place you come anymore to make a ton of money and go back and pay off your student debt. I did do that back in 2000. I paid it off as soon as I could, but it really isn't a great place to come and make a lot of money in a short period of time, like it used to be, and that's what used to bring people over for teaching and so on. Back into the comments, Milchman 2, no plans on going back to kickboxing. I would love to go back to kickboxing. I think if or when we ever get to go back to work normally, that would be part of the routine. I'll go and restart my gym membership. and probably on the way home. Although the other thing is I definitely want to keep jogging. And I must admit, I have to figure that out. It's always tough figuring out how to jog with work. Like I'd love to jog home, but then you've got that problem about changing clothes and carrying clothes home and having a laptop. And can you figure out a way to leave the laptop and everything at work so you can just jog home normally and come back to work the next day and figure out what to do with all the clothes and everything? That's a bit awkward. But I would love to jog more, but certainly the kickboxing, that was sort of designed for it. I could just go home. There's one literally midway on my train ride home, right near the station, so I would love to go back to that. It's a lot of fun. Although one thing I also appreciate is that the kickboxing, it was fun and it was good exercise, and I get the heart rate up and I'd sweat a lot, but I wouldn't really drop weight. I wouldn't cut weight the way that I would when I run. Running was obviously, I'm a ton fitter now than I was when I was kickboxing, but kickboxing is, I guess it's kind of therapeutic as well. And not in the way that you'd think, not in the sense that you're getting out aggression. It's not like that. It's just you get really, really tired. And it's just interesting. You concentrate really hard and you get really tired. So it's a great way for getting the brain to release stress in that sense, that you're distracted more than you are letting out frustration. Jogging is the same thing, actually. So I definitely want to get back into kickboxing, but if things stay the way they are right now, I'll be back there in a month, but probably early next year, hoping to do that. Mr. Cordy Chat, people's salaries are going up accordingly. Are they really, Hiko? Well, I don't know. When I go back to Australia, what I find is that I'm often surprised lately to find that people who are doing the same sort of work that I do in New Zealand, like for example, in New Zealand, a new graduate lawyer when I left New Zealand would earn way less than 50,000 a year, probably 35 to 40,000. So much you'd have to live with your parents pretty much, at least for the first 3 years. Lawyers can get paid could get paid six-figure salaries, but you had to be like 4 or 5 years experience before you'd start to get into that. It was actually pretty tough, especially when you think of the debt and so on that you get into before you start. Whereas I could come to Japan as an IT consultant and get 5 million yen, which is about 50,000. In fact, in New Zealand dollars at the time, it was equivalent to about 70,000. It was almost double what I'd get as a lawyer back in New Zealand. And because of the exchange rate, I was able to pay off my student loan super fast. Now, zoom forward to now. The average wages for qualified lawyers in Tokyo are probably less, I'd say, than lawyers in New Zealand. But of course, the rents are so crazy in New Zealand. Yeah, it's probably, maybe it's all sort of balancing out. But certainly what it means is that when I go back to New Zealand and having, had gotten a good job in Japan, I was always hoping that I'd go back to New Zealand and sort of have a great life back in New Zealand based on all my hard work in Japan. And that is not the case. I'm not well set up for going back to New Zealand. I guess I'm not badly set up for going back to New Zealand, but not the way I was expecting. It would be still painful for me to buy an average house in New Zealand. Probably would have ended up the same way either way. Certainly the same in Australia as well. Barry Convex, I run home with a laptop in your running backpack every day. Running backpacks work great. Yeah, maybe this is too much information. I did try that a while, about 15 years ago, and I found, maybe this is just me, that I would get running with a backpack, apart from having it hard to get it tied down right enough so it doesn't move around and kick you in the back the whole way. I'd also find I'd get like acne and stuff. Like just having like a backpack against my back was just I would be a mess after. It would mess up my skin. So I didn't. If I could figure out a good solution for that, I wouldn't mind running with a laptop. But I tried it a couple of times and I didn't like it at all. So there again, I might figure out a solution for running without a laptop. But then even then, you still got to have a backpack with the clothes, and we'll see. Maybe it's different. This is a long time ago that I tried it and gave up. But I do appreciate the advice. Aaron asks, any thoughts on the comparison of size and livable space in Japan versus Italy? When you say livable space, you mean of the size of the country or apartments? I don't know exactly how livable. I guess I'm guessing that Italy is geographically, as is California, actually very, very similar to Japan. I always think of New Zealand, Great Britain, California, and Japan as being equivalent size. Although now that you raise it, Aaron, I guess Italy would be the same as well. I don't know the population of Italy. That's the other thing, I guess. But I'm guessing that Italy probably would have about 30-40 million people, and Yeah, even assuming that it had the same amount of livable space as Japan. I mean, Italy looks lovely, by the way. Everyone, all the pictures I've sort of seen, but there again, I have an image of it being mountainous. So perhaps it's similar. I don't know. Maybe someone here can look up Wikipedia and add in the comments if the living space in Italy is similar. But yeah, so no real comments, I'm afraid, other than it looks really nice in Italy. I've never been there, by the way. I've been through Croatia, which is on the other side of the Adriatic, and have an image of it being kind of similar, but yeah, I guess I don't know. Mr. Cordychap, lawyers who get paid that have to work crazy hours. Yes, well, that's the thing. You really are. The pay can get very good, but you basically have to work like crazy, like you don't have to work in a lot of other jobs. Although that said, I took I decided not to be a lawyer and take the only profession, or not the only profession, but a profession where you have to work even more as an IT professional in Japan, and where I was getting paid, well, initially better, but in the long run a lot worse. That's why I changed professions. But yeah. AV84K, Italy is about 60 million. Oh, there we go. I got that wrong, so thank you for that. Interesting. Yeah, I have an image of it being about the same as UK, but I didn't realize it was the same. So yeah, super interesting. Anyway, next story, NHK and Nikkei have been featuring a lot more. In fact, this is actually the main thing I should have been talking about. With the election coming up, we are 1 week away from the election. First of all, Japan's democracy, I don't know, you point to any country that has a great democracy per se. All democracies have their own flaws and quirks and so on, but at the same time, one thing that I really can't stand as an English speaker who consumes English language news media is the US 18-month primaries to the whole election cycle taking like more than a year in America. It's no wonder everyone votes for extremists at the end of it, because they just, there's too much time to fill up. And hearing just a few reasonable, moderate policies just isn't interesting news over an 18-month period. And so people just become more dramatic and extreme. And it just gets weird. People just start supporting the fringe candidates, like just out of boredom, I'm pretty sure. I think that's partly what's happened with some of the recent, in both parties, by the way. Japan, in contrast, the election campaign, national election is happening next week. The campaign took 2 weeks. I barely know what's happening. I mean, right now there is saturation on Japanese news media, where every day you see each one of the political party leaders talking and so on, although they don't even say very much, and what very little they say is very, very moderate. No one's talking about kicking out all the Mexicans or anything like that. There's no time to actually get that deep into extreme stuff, and if you did have a shock, honestly, it wouldn't wear off. People wouldn't get desensitized to it because you got the vote right away. I think that the biggest flaw, there are many flaws with American democracy. There's gerrymandering, there's the whole first parts of the post-electoral system, the electoral college system. There's many, many things that should be fixed. But the biggest problem is the fact that it takes 18 months and it costs so much money, I think would be the second one. And I think that's just skewed everything over there. And while Japanese politics is messed up, as I love to talk about all the time on the show, just the fact that there's a 2-week election campaign is a good thing. What is interesting around this at the moment is timing-wise, like I said early on, with COVID cases going down, with nearly going on certainly well beyond 1.5 years. I mean, heading towards 2 years with basically foreign student and working visa people being blocked from coming into Japan. This is now the number of people waiting. The number I think was actually given. There was another story here: 370,000 foreigners with valid visas already approved to come into Japan are still stuck and have been waiting at longest since last March. I have co-workers who are waiting to transfer with their families to Japan, have approved visas ready to go, and they've just been waiting, as well as, of course, all the students and so on, as well as all the workers coming to work in Japanese factories, which make up the largest proportion of that number. And yeah, there isn't a lot of coverage on the impact, of course, because these are foreigners. They're a bit of a blind spot in Japanese media. But now that the government is starting to think about reopening this, and again, great thing about Japan is immigration is just never politicized, or it's almost never politicized. They just leave it up to the Justice Ministry and the Immigration Department to decide what's best based on what the country needs, which is how immigration should be decided. I think in most countries it really shouldn't be left up to voters. Because it's just too vulnerable to people's prejudices, which can be counterproductive to national interest, as we're finding in Brexit in the UK at the moment. So yeah, right now it looks very much like all of a sudden the NHK is running these stories about how industry is suffering from not having foreigners, how schools are suffering from not having foreign students, and how other countries are opening up. And lately, the difficulty where this has been completely not covered at all in Japanese media. Now I've got Nikkei and NHK focusing on, hey, there's all these people who have been waiting for all of this time very patiently, and we should let them in, or else we're going to lose them to other countries that want the same workers and same talent, and we're going to miss out. So this looks like it's really preparing the ground for, people were talking about not reopening until like April, whereas now, particularly with America recently saying that they're going to start reopening to foreign workers and travel, like at least from some countries in November. It really looks like the government's preparing to reopen. And what was interesting about this, or the reason I mentioned the election, is that this did come up in one context in the election. There was a TV political party leader debate where basically the Constitutional Democratic Party, the main opposition party, has been kind of campaigning based on they're going to drop the sales tax and they're going to, sort of reverse a lot of the unpopular aspects of the legacy of Abenomics and so on. But they also have been criticizing the government for being too lax. Go-to travel was a disaster, and that the government's been too passive in the COVID-19 response, and we need to get tougher on COVID-19 and do more testing. More testing is the main thing that they're saying. But however, when they were asked on this TV debate, what do you think about it? It looks like the government's preparing to reopen access to foreign visa holders soon. The opposition leader basically said that no, we should be going in the opposite direction. We're being far too lax. We should be increasing restrictions, i.e. he kind of left an impression that he would be against reopening, or at least a lot more conservative about it, which again, I get it. He's trying to play to the domestic audience and trying to play on the theme that the government's been too lax on COVID-19 and the opposition will be tougher. But, again, it's kind of, this is why you don't want immigration to get into elections, because it's kind of scoring points of 370,000 people's lives getting messed up for a year and a half, like not able to live in the place that they want to live. It's worse than being in jail in a way, because, I guess you have freedom wherever you are elsewhere, but it literally freezes your entire life. Particularly people who were unfortunate enough, for example, visa holders who just left for trips and weren't able to get back in. Fortunately, they are now back in the country, but for workers, it's having a big impact. It's good that it's starting to come into the media, but I think the reason it's coming into the media is that this is literally the press club system works, where government bureaucrats feed these stories to the press in order to sort of lay the ground that this is going to change, in order to prepare people. And it's done by the government agencies themselves and the bureaucrats, not by the politicians. They cooperate with the media, and the media cooperates with them in exchange for information, for stories. So these are all really, really positive signs, particularly if you're someone waiting to come back into Japan on a student visa or a work visa. I think, unless we get a really gnarly sixth wave, which could still happen in November or December, I think if we get into like November, I think maybe before the end of November even, maybe December, if there's no bad sixth wave, I think we could actually start to see a substantial loosening of workers with valid visas who have been waiting to get back in Japan, get into Japan, to be allowed into Japan. That's my prediction. That's how I interpret all of this news coverage at the moment. So there's some good news coming there. Back into the comments. Population of Italy, thank you. 18 months isn't long enough, should be longer, says Quint Ragged. Well, maybe. Aaron, I have to renew my US passport. They said it takes 4 months now. Isn't that insanity? I mean, why would it take 4 months when no one's traveling? You'd assume there'd be less people getting passports given that they can't travel. That's strange that it would take longer. Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me, Aaron. I'm sorry to hear that. That sucks. That does remind me I should check that I've got all my family's passports up to date. Normally we do it automatically because we travel every year, but I guess not traveling for a while. So yeah, just to renew that is nuts. The Condor, welcome back, the Condor. America as an empire, oh, the imperialists, yes, tell me more, has several different cultures. America has a bazillion cultures, although it also has a melting pot culture, philosophy, which I think is falling away lately, but that's it's interesting how they differ from Canada on their approaches to all the cultures, but yes. Japan is really a relatively more monolithic culture, so there is naturally more division in the US. You're talking about the politics? Well, yes and no. I mean, look, politically, Japan has like 8 viable political parties. America has 2, and the system in America is designed to only be, I mean, politically, I'd say America is much more of a monolith. The Democrats and the Republicans, for all of the blue team, red team insanity that comes out of America, honestly, like from the outside, dealing with them from trade and foreign policy and military, and are you going to get bombed by them? The Democrats and Republicans are not that far apart. You know, there's not really not a lot of genuine political choice in America for all of the ethnic and all the other, for the economic, ethnic, cultural, historical, and all the other separations within the society. I don't think the politics reflects the incredible diversity of America at all. That's, again, part of the flaw there. And the fact that you've only got 2 very, very similar, I mean, again, people have to play up. They're out of boredom. They've got to spend 18 months trying to figure out what the difference is. But in the end of the day, when they go into Congress, they're both getting paid by the same lobbyists. They're both passing the same laws in general. So yeah, I mean, I'm a bit of a cynic about that. I don't think America is politically diverse at all. Just 2 teams of crazies. Quint Rankid, excuse me, are you not aware it's the United States and not the United People? I think, don't worry, Quint. I don't think any country is the United People, but thank you for that. Quint Rankid, all this talk about democracy makes me want you to refer to the Federalist number 10 and the Tender Mercies of James Madison. Please don't do that. Iraq 299, evening. No worries at all being late. I've just been chasing squirrels. Good to see you. AV84K, am Italian of Japanese food. Okay, now I am really confused. Although Japan has awesome Italian food, there was an Italian blogger who said that Caesarea is awesome, so it must be true. I don't know. But I will say that certainly, I think Japan has pretty stable, safe. If you see an Italian restaurant in Japan, I mean, again, it's not going to be like a good Italian restaurant where you have real Italians like you do in America or Australia, but it maintains a pretty stable standard, certainly compared to places like New Zealand. So, yeah, the Italian food is actually one of the good things about Japan in general. Speaking as a non-Italian, of course, but yes. Oh, Kerberos Tenshi, this is interesting. Surface areas of places. I love this kind of thing. Scotland has 78,000 square kilometers. Hokkaido has 83,000 square kilometers. Scotland has 5.3 million people. Hokkaido 5.4 million people. Both famous for whiskey. Famous monsters. Nessie, Kusi, yeah. There we go. We've secretly just had a big... I mean, Hokkaido historically is very, very different, of course, to Scotland in terms of its relationship with Japan. But interesting parallels there. Never considered that before. Thank you for that, Kerberos Tenshi. Yeah, Andrew's not been here for a while. I think right now with the daylight saving, or I guess that's not the case. But like America's now, Australia, sorry, is now like 2 hours ahead, right? So perhaps it's not going that well for her, but and I'm glad that she's getting rest, so that is okay. Dan H, hello everyone. Did I watch the video by Asianometry about Japan eating their rich? Yes, I did. I actually did watch that after, although I watched it like right after the video last week, and I'm trying to remember it now, but I watched it right away, and it was a good video. In fact, it was recommendable. Now, what was that about? It was about how Japan, yes, ate the rich, and I thought it would be about the inheritance tax, and it actually wasn't about that, was it? But I'm sorry, it's not fresh anymore, but I thought it was a good video, so I thank you for the recommendation. Wow, lots of comments at the moment. Sorry, screen timing out there. We've got I'm ready for the next political step in the US. Kaiserism. Interesting. Everyone says Caesar for Kaiser, but actually you pronounce it in Latin. The actual pronunciation of Caesarism is Kaiserism, just like the German Kaiser. It's actually the same word. Dan H, did I hear leaked UN about Japan lobbying for keeping oil, gas, and other environmentally unfriendly energy sources? The BBC. I did hear about that. Interesting. I think the challenge that Japan always had on the Kyoto Protocol was Japan started out, everybody was using their 1990 emissions as baselines. And the idea was maintaining or improving on those 1990 levels. The challenge for Japan is that Japan, since the oil shock, and because Japan has no native fossil fuels or anything like that, it had basically gone and done a whole ton of energy efficiency in the 1970s when other countries didn't, which made it a lot harder for Japan relatively to cut back on fossil fuel energy because it was already quite efficient, or at least that was its excuse. Um, yeah, Japan getting a bit of flack lately. Toyota getting flack for sort of saying, hey, give us some more time with the electric cars, and Japan asking for more time with converting. I think the thing about Japan is also, again, in slight defense of Japan, is that they generally will not sign up to make for goals that they don't think they're going to reach, which I think the European Union, in contrast, will be very virtue signaling, but they're not good at following through on the goals that they declare necessarily all the time. But yeah, it is interesting that Japan and Saudi Arabia were lobbying for more time to reach climate change targets, and I don't know what that's about. It'll be interesting to see if it's true, but it sounds plausible. But obviously for different reasons than Saudi Arabia. I think Japan thinks it's going to take longer to convert the economy, and they're focusing a lot on doing that with hydrogen and so on at the moment. But yeah, it's tough. There's a lot of limitations. There's a lot of things that make it hard in Japan, but there's things that make it hard in every country. So yeah, it's a little bit disappointing that the country that hosted the Kyoto Protocol is pushing for softer targets at the moment for COP26, but we'll see what happens. Yeah, well pointed out. Okay, I'm going to go to the next topic. It is 11:20. So yeah, just in terms of the election at the moment, this is interesting. I just mentioned how, as much as I would normally, just be anti-LDP. I mean, look, obviously, I'm not a Japanese citizen. I'm not entitled to vote. There are actual laws. Some people mistakenly think that foreigners are actually prohibited from from participating in political debate in Japan. That's not the case. You're allowed to participate in political debate, although of course there'll always be people who will jump on that. But there are laws against foreigners participating in campaigning, I believe, and there are laws against foreigners making political donations. In fact, some politicians have been sunk by foreigners giving them money. So I've always thought it'd be kind of cool to just if there's any politicians I really dislike, I could actually just go and get them disqualified by giving them donations. I won't do that. That's okay. But it's kind of fun, generally speaking, just because Japan's democracy, I think, has a problem with stagnation. Just the fact that the LDP was by some measures, I heard a description the other week that the LDP is the most successful political party in any democracy, country considered a democracy. At least in the OECD, for example, just having spent the most time in power. And just for that alone, I think it's an unhealthy system where a lot of people don't want to vote for opposition parties because they say that they're not experienced enough and they won't be able to run the country. And indeed, what we had when the Democrats became the government in 2009 was that the bureaucracy didn't want to work with them, and they had a very hostile relationship, and government really didn't function very well. However, that said, a lot of people feel like, one, the LDP just needs its ass kicked sometimes because they start to take the piss when they've had power too long. And the other thing is just that it's not healthy. You want to have an opposition who has some practice at being in government so that, you actually have an alternative to hold the government accountable. If you don't have a viable alternative party, then you basically have free reign to the ruling party, and that's a problem with the LDP all the time. So in principle, generally by default, and I think a lot of Japanese are like this, by default they don't really like the LDP. And this is particularly true, as with America. The more liberal party, the non-traditional conservative government party, is generally more supported. The opposition gets more support in the urban centers like Tokyo, Osaka, Fukuoka, cities like that. But that said, the electoral system in Japan does heavily favor small rural constituencies. So I guess the American equivalent of red states really do control in Japan, and that's where LDP holds sway, and that's why they traditionally hold on to power. So at the moment, it's interesting that of these parties, the very top left-hand side, that's the LDP, and they are not that popular at the moment, 38.8%. They've lost some support, but again, the largest opposition party in second place there, the blue one in the top, second from the top left, that's the Constitutional Democratic Party, and they're only on 6.6%. They're on single digits. And the third most popular party is actually not an opposition party. They're in coalition with the government. That's the Komeito Party. I could say lots of things about them, but I won't. They are in coalition with the government. So essentially, right now, the opposition is basically having the second most popular party and the fourth most popular party, the 2.8% party. They are basically cooperating in a lot of seats to be able to offer a single candidate to fight against the incumbent LDP candidate to increase their chances of winning seats in parliament. They're agreeing how to split, who gets to put up their candidate in each seat. The problem is, you might say, well, why don't they just merge together and make a single party? Well, the fourth most popular party there is the Communist Party. and they stand for abolition of the monarchy and getting rid of US bases and tearing up the security treaty and things that not even the constitutional Democrats really want to do. In fact, I mean, the other thing is that I've only really supported the LDP a couple of times with elections, and one was certainly about 2012 when the Democrats got kicked out, because they turned out to be like the LDP, like only worse. They were totally beholden to the Ministry of Finance. They completely did the opposite of what they promised voters that they would do in their manifesto. They betrayed the trust and their mandate that they were elected on, and they basically sold out completely. So under Noda and Khan in particular, they betrayed all the voters, and voters still haven't forgotten that or forgiven that. That's why they polled in the single digits. And that said, I mean, the Suga administration, for going through with the Olympics when no one wanted it and being a bit of a shambles in the beginning of the COVID pandemic, I would have been against them. There again, I would also say that I'd say things are relatively in a good state at the moment. And, you know, the way that Japan has handled COVID, although it looks kind of passive, it's produced good results, you know, including the vaccination rates and so on. The other thing is that, look, when I'm hearing the leader of the Democratic Party saying that we should hold on, you know, not be too rash about allowing visa holders to come to Japan, you know, even if they're tested and vaccinated, like we should continue to have the country isolated, like even where there's no good reason to. Then I am like, I'm not sure that right now it's hard to get excited about the idea of the Democrats toppling the government. It was a bit of a ploy, changing the prime minister right before the election, so they'd kind of get the honeymoon thing to skip through. But it does look like the LDP is doing well enough that their regular voters will turn out. And right now, the opposition isn't really doing anything to excite or stimulate voters to come out. So it really does look like the election this week. My prediction is it'll be this time next week, I think, the 31st. It'll actually be the 31st. So we'll actually be looking at the national election next week. But I predict the LDP is probably going to lose some seats based on the opposition cooperation. But fundamentally, they're going to still hold on to power, and not very much is going to change. And I'm actually not that sure that that's entirely a bad thing this time, although generally I'd like to see the government change, but I'd also like to see an organized, viable opposition with ideas, which I don't see it at the moment, even more than usual. So that's the current situation with the election this week. I'm just so glad it is only 1 week that I have to put up with the stupid political ads and noise and so on for a limited amount of time, though. So it'll be over soon, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Back into the comments. So Dan H, how is Japan coping with the global energy crisis, and how hard is it hitting my wallet? Nothing's changed. I talked about this earlier. I suppose if I drove a car right now, petrol prices in Japan, some places are 200 yen a litre, 170 in some places, and so on. So apparently right now gasoline prices are as high as they've gotten, and that is going to go and affect other things that require transportation in the supply chain, so including things like food and whatnot. That is going to happen. So I don't feel it right now, though, because I don't own a car. I haven't owned a car the whole time I've lived in Tokyo. I love cars. I love driving, but I've never needed one in Tokyo. So I only drive on vacations. So I don't really feel it. Electricity, gas, everything is pretty much the same cost it's always been. But we'll see. You know, right now I'm not feeling an energy crisis. I'm feeling the global chip crisis a little bit. Because I want to buy a PlayStation 5 for my son, and they still can't come around. I also just couldn't get very excited about the new iPhone, even though I've got an iPhone 10 at the moment, so it's 3 cycles out of date. Instead of getting a new iPhone, I just got a new iPhone case. I saved, basically, instead of spending $1,500, I spent $15, and I still felt like I got a new phone, so that worked out pretty well. Tech is a little bit boring at the moment, but I'm not. I must admit, I'm lucky, but I'm not suffering from that, so that's a good thing. Barry Bonds, great topics today. I'm glad that you're enjoying the topics, and of course, if tell me what sort of stuff you're enjoying. But I'm glad you're digging the topics. Always random, of course. Shubhas, good to see you. Late to the party, but all good. Good to have our Panama representative with us, and I hope you're enjoying that morning coffee there. Eric Bailey, also good to see you in the comments. And let's keep going through. I don't actually have a lot of topics, but it looks like we are going to end up, as usual, right on time. This is the Prime Minister saying that, yeah, we're totally going to restart go-to travel. And I misread this originally. When it says Wakshin Seishu Nado Susumeta Uede Handan, he's saying we'll see how we're going with vaccinations. I thought initially that meant, we're going to have go-to travel, but with vaccinations as a prerequisite, which I thought would be a great way to promote vaccinations, which is to allow travel vouchers, provided you can prove you've been vaccinated. But that's not what he's saying. He's saying that when the country reaches a sufficient vaccination level, which might be 70, 75, 80%, we're pretty close to 70 at the moment, then they'll talk about having discounted domestic tourism to reboot the tourism economy. The only thing there is that no matter how much you have Japanese traveling around trying to reboost, places like Kyoto that are suffering from lack of tourism, Japan domestic tourism is never going to make up for the missing 30 million, 40 million tourists a year that were coming from overseas. And obviously that's not going to come back right away. I think it is actually worthwhile to do in the right way. I thought the way that it was done, completely unplanned and chaotic and triggering unnecessarily more COVID waves before, was irresponsible. And I think you could actually do a go-to campaign in a way that promotes vaccination and testing and safety measures and so on. So that was a shame. Now I've lost the screen share, but that shouldn't be happening. Hang on a sec. Let me see if I can get that back. Boom. Come on. It's gone. Okay, that's broken. Never mind. I'll talk through the final topics. With the Japan foreign minister is calling for the US to join the CPTPP, which is the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Interesting right now. I mean, remember the TPP. Originally set up by New Zealand, Brunei, Chile, and Singapore, I believe, was expanded. And basically, America thought, okay, this is what we're going to use for the NAFTA of the Pacific region. And it was basically America championed it. And Obama pointed out, we need to do it because if we don't do it, China's going to do it. And America's going to be basically obstructed from trade in the Asia-Pacific region. Now, after 2.5 years of negotiation, the Americans and the Japanese as well let it run right up to a US election where Trump was targeting Hillary over basically being the main negotiator proponent of the TPP, saying it would steal American jobs. So then Hillary said, oh, you know what, I changed my mind. I spent 3 years just negotiating this thing. But I agree, it'll be terrible for American jobs, and I think we need to change it, even though it was what she did. And America just totally, dropped it under Trump, and now Biden's back, but he again is still taking a lot of the same positions as Trump in terms of diplomacy, in terms of military, in terms of trade. And America still is showing no sign of wanting to come back to the free trade treaty, which Japan joined because it was America setting it up, and Japan wanted to, be able to do it in terms of a multilateral free trade to back up the security treaty that it has with America. So America walked away, and remember, it was created and championed by the Democrats, and the Democrats are not coming back to it. Again, I think they're afraid that it's a vote loser, and they see this as one of the things that Trump beat them with, was taking advantage of the fact that the Democrats had championed this, even though it's an excellent idea. So I'm actually with the government at the moment saying, hey, America, get your A into G. The fact that right now you have, you have China and Taiwan both applying at the same time. And the temptation for a lot of Southeast Asian countries to want to get China into it and America not being interested. It continues to be disappointing and frustrating that America which has generally been a champion of free trade and open and free trade and diplomacy, is still in its isolationist bent, which was really set up by the Republicans and is just being continued by the Democrats right now. And they're not coming back to trade. And again, America's lucky. It's big enough and wealthy enough that it doesn't have to be. It can do pretty well being isolationist, but it's disappointing that it is. It allows other countries to take advantage, and that's what's happening. Going to quickly go through a couple of other stories and then I'll wrap up with the comments. Tokyo, a lot of local governments, including the Meguro City Council, announced this week that they will stop storing data on floppy disks. They've been using floppy disk-based citizen record keeping since the 1980s, and they are still using it. And they find that floppy disks are wonderful. They actually send records to archives in lots of floppy disks, and they reuse them over and over again. They say that they're wonderful, but the government's saying that they have to put everything online and they have to stop using those damn floppy disks. So they are doing that. But they have no idea how they're going to do it. They say it's going to take 3 years to stop using them. It's still better than faxes, but again, it shows the massive issues with Japanese IT infrastructure, particularly in government, how big that opportunity is around that's going to change. And that's all the topics that I have. Actually, I really didn't have many topics tonight, so I'm going to round it up with a chat. You've got me. Anything you want me to talk about, I will talk about for another 5 minutes. Quickly checking the comments that we've got here. We've got Dan H. I find it weird with the newspaper trying to put a positive spin on Japanese colonialism with Kishida's great-grandfather in Taiwan. I couldn't imagine it would happen anywhere else. Well, I mean, I think British talk pretty nostalgically about Winston Churchill, and he was a hell of a colonist. I mean, he was like, let's gas the Kurds. 60 years before Saddam Hussein actually did it. He didn't want to let India be decolonized. So, well, again, it depends on the, certainly, obviously, Japanese colonialism and British colonialism is different. I think the difference, particularly, look, nobody is bragging about their grandfather's colonial wonderfulness in South Korea, for example, where there was far more Japanese investment in colonialism, and where it is now far more sensitive. The idea that if Shinzo Abe's like granddad had a corner shop in Seoul, pretty sure that they wouldn't be like they wouldn't have a plaque on it right now. Taiwan's different. Taiwan, again, just because they suffered as much, at least as much, and by some accounts more, under the retreat of nationalist forces from the mainland. And because the period of Japanese rule of Taiwan, again, by some local accounts, was now looked back upon nostalgically, they do put plaques on buildings that were, owned by Japanese administrators and so on. So, yeah, I agree. It's a little bit cringy, as colonialism anywhere in the world is. But I guess Taiwan and Palau are like the only two places in the world where Japanese colonialism is ever seen, and certainly not uniformly seen, but is seen by some people in a positive and nostalgic light. I agree. Probably not a good idea to play it up, and I don't see really what benefit it does to Kishida broadly. But yeah, I thought it was an interesting story. It's in Kaohsiung, right? That there's and I do find that aspect of Japan's colonial history fascinating. Look, I come from a colony myself, so the hypocrisy, particularly towards people from the British Empire, towards the idea that there is an underlying racism in the idea that Japanese colonialism was inherently brutal, but British colonialism was inherently good. That is an underlying current, and it comes from the belief that non-white people were not civilizing. They were sort of Mongol hordes, like dressed up in suits and trying to act civilized, but weren't civilized like us. It was very much the same sort of enterprise over a shorter period of time, and with the same sort of brutality towards the native inhabitants, in Taiwan included, of course. So yeah, but the point is as well that it was so limited in Japan. You very seldom. I agree, it's weird to hear about it because you never hear about that sort of thing. But I guess it was raised only because it's unusual to have people in Taiwan still looking after the place and playing up that this was one of those wonderful Japanese places. You don't hear that very often. I mean, you go to India, you don't hear that very often about the British either. So yeah, it's a bit weird, I guess. Iraq 299 met my local politician the other day. Me on a bicycle, nice little chat. But pointless in the end as I can't vote. Hey ho. Yeah, I must admit, I would really like. It's for Japanese to decide whether I should be able to vote or not. But I don't see the harm in letting, even if it's just at local level, letting permanent residents vote. I get it. The sensitivity here is that, there are so many Chinese permanent residents in Japan and so on. And there's this sort of fear which New Zealand had like 100 years ago of being overwhelmed by immigrants and having its politics being manipulated by outside forces. That's always the justification for restricting people to citizenship, voters to having citizenship. But there again, we participate in the community. It's good for us to know our local politician, and certainly, if we have comments about the frequency of the garbage being taken out, or frankly, even foreigner-related matters that affects the community, there should be a way. If you don't allow it through voting, we should be allowed to talk to them. I think it's great that your local politician talked to you. It sounds nice. So yeah, it'd be nice to be able to do that, but we'll see. Eric Bailey, I'm okay with the slow immigration. Makes it more valuable. Makes me more valuable as a freelancer in country with a marriage visa. Indeed, yeah. If you're in country right now, I think it's a good position. But there again, there are a ton of people again with jobs. And remember, you have to get a certificate of eligibility, i.e., you can only get into Japan on a work visa if a company already has confirmed that they need you. And part of the certification of eligibility form, I believe, is that they have to say that this job can't be filled by a domestic person. You know, they have to actually confirm that they need a foreigner for the role first as part of that process. So, you know, Japan is suffering, but certainly, yeah, it does certainly put up I imagine that freelance, particularly English teachers and so on, it must be quite good for the supply and demand thing at the moment, although again awkward with I guess jukus and stuff also not doing as well, but interesting. Cobras Tenshi, did I hear about the tech that scans your fingerprints for your vaccination status? I've not heard of that. Can they tell your vaccination status from your fingerprints, or you mean that they just like register biometrically that you've done it? So registering your fingerprints together with your vaccination status for bigger venues. Oh, I get it. So it'll like memorize, so you just have to do a thumbprint or a handprint, and it will use that to identify who you are and match you in a database, confirming that you're vaccinated, right? I haven't heard of that, but that sounds like a good idea. I mean, personally, I like the idea of having an app that you can just show, and that lets you, you know, decide yourself. I don't know about necessarily wanting to give all my biometric information to, you know, a random database, but yeah, there again, it would be more convenient. And in the end of the day, if it's to let me get into a place that I'm entitled to go to and it saves me time, I'd be for it. But interesting, I haven't heard of that, but it's an interesting idea. Thank you for sharing it. Cobras Tenshi. Well, hang on a sec, jumped ahead here. I've lost my place, but there are a lot of comments. Okay, the Condor, the US didn't defeat the Soviet Union by trading with them. We won't defeat China by trading. I'm not saying trade with China. I'm saying China is not in the TPP. The idea was that, well, America did defeat the Soviet Union by trading with Japan and by trading with other democratic countries, no question. The US economy defeated the Soviet economy, and it wasn't, I don't think anyone, remember the CTPP, China's not in it. And the whole idea is it was based on its strong relationships with the rest of the world. Which were fostered through openness and free trade. I mean, that was what the whole ideological thing was about capitalism and dealing with other capitalist countries. So, you know, frankly, the Soviet Union lost because of isolationism. Its isolated and controlled economic system is what caused the Soviet system to collapse. And that's kind of the direction that America is going in right now. So, actually, I don't think America is taking the lessons from the Cold War correctly at the moment at all. But yeah, AV84K, will they upgrade to 32 megabyte USB sticks? Well, you know, baby steps. I think they'll probably go to zip drives. You remember zip drives? I had one of those. You could actually have 100 megabyte floppy disks. They were pretty awesome. I had one of those when I came to Japan. In fact, no, they were 10 megabyte. You're right. So that's, oh yeah. And then you had the Sony, like, you know, only worked in Sony camera, the 32 megabyte special SD memory and so on. I think we can go on little baby steps for that. But yes, hope that will be how it goes. Quinn Rankid, our isolationism isn't nuanced. For what I see, it is more concerned with military spending overseas. It has spilled over into anti-free trade. I see that too. And you know what? I actually kind of understand the whole withdrawal from Afghanistan getting so much flack at the moment. I kind of like, again, America's, you know, shed so much blood for other countries. Yeah, I'm actually kind of okay with cutting back on a lot of the adventurism and so on, but I agree. I think that mistrust of foreign, it all feeds into, I think that's actually a very astute comment there, Quint Rankin, and I completely agree with you, and it's a shame. Because free trade is genuinely, I think, how you, you know, is one of the ways that you break down. You end up not having military conflicts with countries that you have extensive ties with, including economic ties. Although, of course, China is partly disproving that at the moment, but the fact that those economic ties are breaking is increasing the risk around that. So, yeah. Can I speak a little more about mosaic destruction? Are you talking about that guy who set up an AI to be able to squint and sort of see through the mosaics on adult films in Japan? I did see that today. Is that what you mean, or am I showing something else? There was a new story about a person being arrested for programming an AI that can actually unscramble mosaic adult films. I think again the police, they did they confiscate all the floppy disks? I think they're really using the wrong technology at the moment. But yes, One Johnson, do you see if and how the flat salary patterns in Japan could change in the future 5, 10, 20 years? No idea. I mean, I never imagined. We knew that Japan was going through a bit of a stagnant period when I came here. I didn't think it would be lasting still today. But I think if the factors behind it basically are the demographic changes, well, things are going to get worse, obviously, in the next 15, 20 years. So I can't really see how it's going to improve. I can't see how Japan's going to be able to reboot inflation. So I really, it's really done a lot to try to do it, including printing money like the freaking Argentinian dictatorship, and Mugabe would be proud of how much Japan has been printing money, and it still hasn't triggered any inflation. So I don't know. I mean, given that they're trying so hard to trigger inflation, I guess at some point maybe it would happen. But all the other factors dragging, the cost of workers down and so on, I can't see it changing. I think it's going to stay flat myself. I don't see how it's going to turn around, given how much they've tried. That's just my opinion. But there again, I mean, nobody predicted it was going to stay like this for 10, 20 years, and it could totally change. But I don't see right now how that's going to change. So One Johnson, hope that helps. Eric Bailey, still a raging libertarian, and I still hit the like button. Yes, hit the like button. Thank you for. Hey, I'll take communist likes. I'll take capitalist likes. I'll take libertarian likes. I'll take hippie green likes. I'll take all the likes. So yeah, and if you dislike, just click on that red subscribe button. That will express it very, very well. You're allowed to dislike if you want to dislike, but yes. Two final ones here. Quentin Rackett, yes, that's what I meant. Adult entertainment. Oh, okay. I was worried I was giving away something there on the wrong topic. What do I say about it? Well, obviously it's ridiculous. In Japan, it's kind of funny here. How much do I give away that I know about this? Technically, of course, as everybody knows, if you're living in Japan, it is illegal for you to, for example, if you are the sort of radical criminal type that would actually type www.pornhub.com for whatever and look at an American adult website that does not use mosaics on things, although I understand sometimes they do for some Japanese content. But if you just accessing non-mosaic material in itself, even having that temporarily stored in the cache memory of your computer, is technically breaking the law in Japan. But everybody does that now. It used to be back in the day, back in the 90s, I had friends who were like, hey, dude, I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a Yakuza run petrol station where they sell unmosaicked adult videos, out the back, and I know how to get them, and I got this one. Everybody gather around, we can watch an unmosaicked video. And I saw some friends got these sort of, these sort of gangster unmosaicked videos, and they were, awful quality. They were like dubbed manually, and they were usually black and white and had no sound. They were often actually the pre-edit copies, so you could see the timestamps and everything on them. And those were called the Ura videos, the hidden out the back videos. And they used to have these in Japan, and they were like, people would be arrested. You'd hear on the news, someone was arrested for having these Ura videos. But the internet's kind of made that ridiculous. And so on top of that, so the idea that the police is still chasing, literally, and this happened, I remember this, there were news stories years ago that people were even selling DVDs still, that were had unmosaicked content, and they arrested people for it, for the obscenity laws. And most of the internet comments were, why would you watch anything on DVD still? Let alone, illegal content that, and as expected, the people getting arrested for it were in their 70s. So the fact that they're still prosecuting people for even looking at websites that don't have mosaic content, even though, thank heavens, in Japan, unlike other countries in Asia that actually proactively block these web filters and they monitor what everyone looks at on the internet, Japan doesn't do that at all. You can see anything in Japan. But technically, the police could come and arrest you if they thought that you had a bunch of unmosaic content on your hard drive or even your temporary memory storage, which is crazy, which they do sometimes. But on top of that, the idea that they would go and prosecute somebody who's not publishing obscene content, they're simply allowing people to reverse the government-approved mosaics, is just crazy. and that person's in jail. So yeah, do people have VPNs in Japan? Yeah, sure. I know people use VPNs for whatever they like, but often for watching American Netflix or stuff like that, people use them, but most Japanese don't use them. There isn't really a need. I mean, again, there isn't any internet censorship in Japan. There just isn't. There's no restrictions. You can't hit Google things and have you can't Google something, try to open a page and have a police warning page come up, which I've heard can pop up in other countries when you travel and look for websites that you can see in Japan all the time. So yeah, it's I don't know. It is crazy, and again, it's just pretty much the mindset of a country that just is still stuck 40 years in the past in terms of technology. Cobra Tenchi, wasn't there a case a few years ago where one of those censoring engineers got arrested for not censoring an adult video enough? Japanicist made a video about that. I'm pretty sure about that. I think the other thing, it was often those censors that would keep the original copies and make the secret copies and make some money on the side, and so they would often get arrested for that. I think the Mosaic guy who got arrested was because he was selling it. Yeah, I think that was the case as well. But again, the idea of getting around it just with an AI tool and getting arrested for that, as if you're the one publishing the content that it's used for, I mean, that's a little bit like, you might as well be prosecuting the people who make the computers that they program the AI on as well, because the computers contributed to the obscenity just as much as the program did. I mean, sure, the program was designed for the purpose, but I think it's silly. But it happened. So yes, things to be careful of in Japan. We are way over time, even though I had no topics. This happens a lot. Thank you for all the requests, however. Google censors political content in the US. Trump's social network site will not come up in a search for it. Yeah, well, personally, I'm glad. I personally censor the word Trump on Twitter. I don't want to see anything, either way, positive or negative about him, because he's a moron, and I think I'm kind of with Google on that one, but I don't care. I really don't care. Anyway, that's just me. Look, everybody, thank you for a lot of interaction tonight. That is a lot of fun. I do appreciate all the comments, and great to see you all. Again, we'll find out what's happening with the Japanese elections next week. Hopefully some better news on I'm pretty sure the country's going to reopen soon. I'm really looking forward to sharing that. Other than that, stay safe. If you're in Tokyo, I know it's a good time at the moment. Do go out and see your friends and do the things that you're supposed to do. But of course, be careful, because there's probably going to be another wave. So, take precautions. But enjoy it. Enjoy the great autumn weather in Japan, or the great weather wherever you are. Remember, if you like the video, because it helps. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. That also helps the channel. Have a good week. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter. Stay safe. Peace. And kakita no. Have a good week, everybody.